Humans and the biodiversity crisis. The human species is labeled by the scientific term Homo sapiens, a two-word name that is Latin for wise man. Indeed, humans are the most intelligent of all species with an enormous cognitive ability. When humans under society perceive an environmental constraint, such as a scarcity of resources, they often have been able to understand the limiting factors and to then use insight and tools to manipulate the environment accordingly. The clever solution have generally involved management of the environment or other species to the benefit of humans, or the development of social system and technology that allows a more efficient exploitation of natural resources. Humans are not the only species that can cope up with ecological constraints in clever ways. A few other species have learned to use rudimentary tools to exploit the resources of their environment more efficiently. For example, the woodpecker finch of the Galapagos Island uses cactus spines to fry its food of insect out of fissure in bark and rotting woods. Chimpanzee modify twigs and use them to extract termites, a favorite food, from termite moths. Next is the Egyptian vultures pick up stone in their beak and drop them on ostrich, breaking them and allowing access to the rich food inside. Although other species have developed behavioral changes that allow more efficient exploitation of their environment, none have approached the number of variety of innovation developed by humans. Moreover, no other species has developed a cumulative expertise for exploiting such a broad range of resources, and no other species has managed to spread these adapted capabilities as extensively as humans have in an extremely global culture. Unfortunately, humans also have developed an unparalleled ability to degrade resources and ecosystem and to cause the extinction of other species. The intense damage caused by humans and our economy is of course a major element of the subject matter of the environmental science. These days, of course, ecosystems are influenced not just by natural environmental structure. In many situations, anthropogenic influence had become the most important constraining influence on the productivity of the species and on ecosystem more generally. This direct and indirect influence have intensified enormously in modern times. Humans affect ecosystem and species in three direct ways. Number 1, by harvesting valuable biomass such as tree and hunted animals. Number 2, by causing damage through pollution. And lastly, number 3, by converting natural ecosystem into land uses for the purpose of agriculture, industry, and urbanization. This action also engendered many indirect effects. For example, the harvesting of trees altered the habitat condition for the diversity of plants, animals, and microorganisms that require forested habitats, thereby affecting their pollution. At the same time, timber harvesting indirectly changes the functional properties of landscape such as erosion, productivity, and the quality of the water flowing in stream. Both the direct and indirect effect of the human on ecosystem are important. Humans have always left footprints in nature. To some degree, they have always influenced the ecosystem of which they were a component. During most of more than 100,000 years of evolution of modern Homo sapiens, that ecological footprint was relatively shallow. This was because the capability of humans for exploiting their environment was not much different from the other similar abundant large animals. However, during the most cultural evolution of humans, the ecological changes associated with our activities progressively intensified. This process of cultural evolution has been characterized by the discovery of and use of extremely more sophisticated methods, tools, and social organization to secure resources by exploiting the environment and other species. Biodiversity, a shortened form of biological diversity refers to the existence of numbers of species of plants and animals in an environment. Biodiversity is also defined as the existence of variability among living organisms on the earth, including the variability within and between species and within the between ecosystem. Biodiversity is a paramount factor for the survival of the living world in general and mankind in particular. The fewer species, such as animals and plants, we have, the fewer people we will have on Earth. During the last decades, loss of biodiversity is on rise. Following are the major causes of threats to biodiversity. Number 1 is the habitat loss. Today, major loss of biodiversity in the world has been done by man. Man has begun to overuse or misuse most of this natural ecosystem. Due to the mindless and unsustainable resource use, once the productive forest and grassland has been turned into desert and wasteland have increased all over the world. Rapid industrialization, urbanization, and growth in population have resulted in massive deforestation and consensual habitat loss around the world. For instance, mangroves had been cleared for fuel wood and prawn farming, which has led to decrease in the habitat essential for breeding to marine fish. Forests all over the world, in particular tropical rainforests such as Amazon, are under unforeseen threat largely from conversion to other land uses. Scientists have estimated that human activities are likely to eliminate approximately 10 million species by the year 2050. It is also estimated that at the present rate of extinction, about 25% of the world's species will undergo extinction fairly rapidly. Rich biodiversity such as tropical forests, wetlands, and coral reef worlds over will constitute the major part of extinction. Next is the poaching of wildlife. Poaching of wildlife for trade and commercial activities has been on the rise for the last many decades. It has been a significant cause of the extinction of hundreds of species and the endangered of many more, such as whales and many African large mammals, Asian tigers, and etc. Most extinction over the past several hundred years is mainly due to the overharvesting for food, fashion, and profit. Illicit trade in the wildlife in the current times is driving many species of wild animals and plants to extinction. Elephants are poached for ivory, tigers and leopards for their skin, pangolin for meat and scales. Poaching wildlife. The global illegal wildlife trade is estimated to be between $7 billion and $23 billion in illicit revenue annually. It is now considered the most lucrative global crime after drugs, humans, and arms. In 2015, the United Nations General Assembly unanimously adopted a resolution for tracking illicit trafficking in wildlife. Man-wildlife conflict. Man-wildlife conflict refers to the interaction between wild animals and people and the consequential negative impact on both of them. Human population growth and the resultant destruction of wildlife habitat for human habitation and economic prosperity create reduction of resources or life to some people and wild animals. Worldwide Fund for Nature defines these conflicts as any interaction between humans and wildlife that result in a negative impact on human social, economic, or cultural life, on the conservative or wildlife population, or on the environment. Although man-wildlife conflict is as old as human civilization, in modern times the degree of conflict has been on rise due to high rise of human population in the past several centuries. Since human population expand into wild animals' habitat, natural wildlife territory is displayed. Reduction in the availability of natural prey or food resources leads to the wild animals seeking alternate sources. Alternate new resources created by humans draw wildlife resulting in conflict. Competition for food resources also occurs when humans attempt to harvest natural resources such as fish and grassland pasture. There are many consequences of man versus wildlife conflict. The major consequences are destruction of wildlife habitat, injury and loss of both humans and wildlife, crop damage and livestock depredation, damage of human properties, decrease in wildlife population and reduction in geographic ranges, tropic cascades. Apart from the above, there are other causes or threat to biodiversity. Factors such as climate change, invasion, or non-native species also add to biodiversity losses in some or other way. Considering the degree of threat or to biodiversity around the world and the vital importance of biodiversity for living beings, or which mankind is a major part, there is an urgent need to conserve biodiversity in the world. Further, we should be concerned about saving biodiversity because of the benefits it provides us, biological resources and ecosystem services, and the social and aesthetic benefits.